This is the site of Tabernae of Antipatris in Israel. The site is dominated by an Ottoman Turkish fortress, which in turn is built on earlier Crusader foundations, and underneath those Crusader foundations are ruins going all the way back to the Bronze Age. Future members of the Texas Foundation for Archaeological and Historical Research came and excavated here between 1978 and 1981 in conjunction with Tel Aviv University. In 1986, members of the Texas Foundation returned to finish up their work in what we call the mercantile quarter of the city of Antipatris. The site of Tabernae of Antipatris was divided into a number of sections. Our Israeli colleagues worked in sections A, B, and X. We worked primarily in sections C and D. You're looking at an aerial view of the excavations. You see quite clearly the Ottoman Turkish fortress. Here again are the designated areas. We will be focusing in this lecture in on Area C. Underneath the southeastern tower of the Ottoman Turkish fortress, there was discovered before we arrived there the remains of the north-south Roman road of the city called the Cardo. Our Israeli colleagues followed the Cardo out for a number of meters towards the south, and it was going to be our job to open up an area of excavation just to the west of that Cardo. And this is where we discovered what we called the shops, or the Tabernae of Antipatris. For great stretches, the Roman road was in quite an excellent condition, although at certain points many of the stones had been robbed away, probably to build the Turkish castle itself. What was of particular interest were the shops that we excavated to the west of the Cardo. This is a ground plan completed after our 1986 excavation showing the various phases of our work. We discovered 4 distinct strata in this area we excavated near the Cardo. We're going to be focusing in on one of the latest strata dated to the late Roman period. Almost all of the structures were fairly identical in shape and size. The Cardo is off the image to the top of the screen, and from a sidewalk one would enter into these 2-room structures. Again, these structures we called by their Latin name the Tabernae, or the shops. In a few instances the walls were in excellent condition, although throughout most of the area, since there had been significant robbing during the Middle Ages, there were just 1 or 2 courses of stones, and some of the walls tumbled down in the fashion you see here. Occasionally there were mud brick spur walls found within these shops. The shops consisted, as we said, of 2 rooms. The room closest to the Cardo, the foreroom, was generally a room that was fairly well devoid of all artifacts. Occasionally, as we dug down onto the beaten earth floor, we found some pottery sherds that had been smashed and actually beaten or stomped down into the beaten earth floor, becoming part of the floor itself. From the foreroom there was a small opening which led into the back room. In the back room, in each of the shops, we found a massive amount of pottery there, most of it in destroyed condition, usually large amphoras or storage vessels. Most of it was restorable. Here you see some of the cooking pots from the back room, but as I said, most of the pottery were large amphorae, wine vessels or olive oil vessels. The question becomes, what did these shops look like? We only found 1 or 2 courses of stone, but from the information we uncovered, we are able to reconstruct what the Tabernae looked like in Roman times. There is, of course, the threshold block leading right to the sidewalk and the street. From the configuration of the threshold block, we're able to see that there were 2 doors which swung inwards and were bolted by a bolt in between the 2 of them. We then came to the foreroom, usually a step down. There was again a beaten earth floor here, occasionally with some pottery smashed into the floor. The back room was the storage room where all the vessels were contained. In many of the rooms we found the remains of charred beams going across the walls, and since we found absolutely no roof tiles anywhere in this particular section of the city, we came to the assumption that the roofs were not covered with terracotta roof tiles, but broad beams spanned the walls, and on top of the beams there was thatch and then probably some sort of clay or mud thrown across and beaten onto the thatch itself. When we excavated these rooms, these shops, back in the 1980s, we were able to draw something of a reconstruction from the evidence we found. What we're trying to do now is to bring some animation to these constructions. And so in the succeeding animation, we're going to start you off on the corridor and the sidewalk and approach the shops from the sidewalk. We will then enter in through one of the doors into the foreroom, the closest room to the corridor. This was the room in which very little was found, and there you can see the opening going back to the storage room in the back. From the storage room we are going to go up to take a look at the construction of the roof, the large beams, of which we found only the charred remains, and the presumed thatch and clay or mud which covered those roofs. And then we will end by bringing you back to the corridor.